Good morning. Everybody says things like love heals all and all you need is love and love is the answer. And it is. But part of knowing love and being love and really giving love, receiving love is authenticity. You can't feel unconditionally loved by a person unless you're fully known by that person. I mean, fully known. If there's any, well, if he or she only knew this, or if I told them this thing that I did, or that I sometimes think, or that I sometimes fantasize about, whatever, if there's any of that, you're not fully known. And so the level of, to which you feel loved unconditionally, I mean, it may be 99%, but it's not 100%. The only way we're going to feel true love is when we are utterly authentic. And this goes for in our relationships. This also goes for our relationship within ourselves. It's amazing how much we don't want to even admit to ourselves. We don't want to even whisper. And it obviously also our relationship with whatever we consider to be the divine, the universe, great spirit, the energy that's out there, whatever is creating, responding, whatever we call that. The same is true there. Now you may say, well, but it obviously knows it anyway. Well, yeah. But there's a difference between us offering it, opening it, saying it, and just sort of keeping it hidden. I'm talking about this because I made a video a few days ago about my ayahuasca experience, and I talked about how after the ayahuasca experience, I felt less alignment with leaving this life than before the ceremony. But because I mentioned that before the ceremony, I was feeling a lot of alignment with leaving. It just held more juice. I had, just the truth, I had more excitement around it. You call that what you want. It's just the truth of how things were. I'm smiling right now because that's how you feel when you just say, this is where I am, right? When we're angry, we're feeling like a victim. We can struggle against the fact that we feel that, or we can just, in that moment, say, this is me, this is where I'm at, and just let it be okay. And that is the fastest way out of a lower, heavier feeling. You can try to will yourself out of it by, I hate that I feel this way, I shouldn't feel this way, let me do all these things to not feel this. Let me do these spiritual practices, or go run to the gym, or run out into nature because I don't want to feel this. I shouldn't. And we can judge what we feel, and we can sort of slog our way and crawl our way out of that. Or we can just distract ourselves out of that. We can. Sometimes it takes a while. It's going to take longer and longer the more you do that. Because at a certain point, the universe, whatever you want to call it, yourself, the deeper part of you, is wanting you to integrate self-love in the deepest way. I mean, I think that's the overarching lesson. We have all these reasons we're here, all these 8 billion really different individual purposes here. I totally get that. But in an overarching way, I think integrating all aspects of the human experience, the divine, and loving, returning to the love that we are and being able to hold that and have this human experience from a place of love is sort of the overarching, in my feeling anyway, is kind of the overarching sort of purpose here. And so it's going to get harder and harder to not just love the moment as it is and love where you are. For those, especially, on a self-aware path, that a big part, that are really tuned into that purpose of self-realization and growth. All the ways that you had to get around that, they'll just stop working, including things like meditation and yoga and breath work, and eventually they'll all just not work the same way until all you can do is just love where you are and just surrender to it and jump into that pool of utter self-love and let it take you somewhere different, which it will. So the beautiful thing about that, and when we start talking about where we really are at, without judgment, we become a safe space for other people to talk to. And that's a beautiful thing, because we're now using our authenticity and helping other people find theirs and find the freedom that lies in that. And I'm grateful for that the people that have reached out to me, saying, yeah, I felt that a lot, or I feel that right now. I'm really stuck and I just don't really want to be here. And I just want to say again, I hold no judgment about that. There is no judgment about that. You have a free consciousness, a free choice. Now, do I feel like it's in the highest sole purpose of most people that feel that way to actually find an exit out of life? Probably not. But I do feel like I said before, that in some ways our highest purpose is complete and utter self-love. And so when you stop and think about it and feel into it, perhaps the greatest self-love you could fall into is utter freedom around what you do with your life and your consciousness, that you're worthy of that. Now, some people are going to hear that, and it's really going to be a warm space, of a soft space in their heart. Other people are going to be really triggered by that, and that's okay. We have different views about our relationships and what we mean to each other, and so many of us are still very much in a place of that we're sourcing our happiness from another person, other people, other things, jobs, which is fine. And we, of course, we look at other people that way too. And so, whether it's me or someone you know, the thought of them lining up with an exit, all that mind can think about is how that would affect other people. And I get that. I mean, and that's definitely a real thing. Um, where does that come from? Is it something to look at? And some would say, well, that comes from love. I love other people. I don't want them to be hurt. Right, because you want their heart to feel whole and to feel free. But if we apply that to everyone, including people that maybe are really ready to go, wouldn't we want the same freedom for them? Doesn't love ultimately want someone to feel free? There's so many analogies you could bring to bear. It's like when, you know, I mean, I guess it's like any parent whose kid is going to go off to war. That's what they've chosen to do. Um, Hopefully from a place of freedom and not obligation, but say they've chosen to do that, and the parent then has to really stop and say, what do I want more? Does love want my child to feel free? I'm going to set them free to follow their heart, or am I going to protect my heart or the hearts of other people that might be affected if they die in a war situation? I mean, that's not an exact analogy, but that's the point, I think, is when we really love, we know everyone's free and we're fine with that freedom. And we also know that there is an infinite amount of peace, love, and joy that everyone can source from within themselves. That life can be full and bright and happy no matter who's around and who isn't. That isn't to say that there isn't a gaping hole, a gaping wound that has to heal when we lose people that we're close to. That's a part of it's a part of humanity. I'm not saying that isn't there, and that isn't perhaps the most difficult thing we go through. But I don't think it has to be as difficult as it's always been. I think as we move more and more into a space of real connection with who we really are and with love, and again with whatever name you want to give to spirit, I think that will actually shift some. I would say, in closing, to anyone that has struggled or is struggling now with wanting this life to be over, wanting to be out of their body, either because they're suffering, they're in pain, or they're just, or they're just at peace and they feel complete, and they really just are more more interested in leaving than staying, I would say talk about it. Just say it. Some people will accept it and be supportive. Some people won't. It'll trigger the shit out of a lot of people. It'll bring up all their fear. But you're going to feel better, for one thing. And they're going to have an opportunity to look at why it bothers them so much. And some will and some won't. And from that place of freedom of, this is my moment, this is how I really feel, you'd be surprised where that will take you and what sort of possibilities might offer themselves to you. Suddenly, that might not look like the option you really want the most. It might still. I mean, at some point it's gonna, when we're all, at some point, I mean, we're all gonna die. So it may or may not really shift things for you. But you're gonna feel better just being real and being honest with yourself and losing the judgment that you had. I, for one, do not think you're broken and there's something that needs to be fixed in you. Even though it may be this can come from what some would call, a fight or flight, coping mechanism from childhood, from trauma. That very well may be the case, but if you look at it as you're going to heal that, for some people, you have to love that. You have to integrate that into wholeness, not look at it like I'm broken and this needs to be fixed. And for those of you that hear that from other people, if you come at them with this attitude of, I have to fix you, I can tell you, it doesn't help. What helps the most is, okay, boy, that would be really hard for me, but your heart is free and I love you. I respect whatever you choose to do. When you hear that from other people, that really shifts things inside. It's just like when you do that within yourself. It expands you. That kind of love just expands you. And that's the best thing you can say to somebody. Now, some people will hear that and say, oh, you're just giving people permission to just off themselves. Yep. And I don't think permission will lead to more people doing it. Most people in that situation are in this massive internal struggle. And that's exactly what they need to actually get out of their own internal struggle and be lifted up out of a place of, that feels really limited. All this like suicide prevention talk, to me, makes it worse. Because you're saying life is more important than freedom. And like William Wallace said, well, whether he actually said what Mel Gibson said in the movie or not, but what will you do without freedom? What is life without freedom? Your soul is free. It longs to feel the freedom that it is. You have to give it that. We have to realize we will live and we will grow and we will thrive from a place of utter freedom. Not when we just say, no, you know, when we say no, you can't, you're not free to do this. You have to finish. This life is more important than freedom is what all this suicide prevention is saying. Freedom, utter freedom, is the suicide prevention that you're looking for. It's my feeling. It's my actual experience. Freedom is the greatest suicide prevention. Authenticity feels really good. Have a good day.